We now welcome Reverend Paul Johnson, who's going to talk to us about triangles are forever.
Thank you, Beth. Um, a wife is upset with her husband because she believes that he's overcommitted to his work life and has neglected her and their children. But rather than address this with her husband, she calls her brother and tells him that things aren't going very well at home because of this neglect. But she tells her brother um, that she doesn't want him to mention this to her husband because she knows that they're good friends and doesn't want to upset their relationship. Well, the brother feels angry about the mistreatment of his sister, but he feels good about the fact that his sister has opened up to him about a problem, and he didn't want to betray her trust. Well, at the same time, this is going on, the husband begins to feel more and more distant from his wife. And he mentions this to his brother, but then says, please don't tell her anything. Well, the brother begins to feel very, very much in the middle of things. He suffers from anxiety. What can he possibly do? Meanwhile, the relationship of husband and wife continues to deteriorate. A minister returns from a summer vacation and is called by a member of the congregation and told that another woman in the congregation is angry with him and has been telling many, many people in the congregation about her anger because I had not visited her husband in the hospital. I had not shown any concern for their family during a very stressful time. And she had expressed this anger with many people in the congregation. So the caller suggested that I make contact with her and try to iron this out. The minister makes the call and expresses his concern for the husband and family and mentions that he was not aware of her husband's illness and hospitalization. He inquires if she had called the church office and talked to the secretary, or because the secretary could have helped, we had a minister on call while I was gone. But she hadn't notified the office. She said, well, I just assumed you knew because everyone in the congregation knows. Well, I made further contact with the family, expressing my concern and care, but realized there was no way that I could contact all the members of the congregation who had angrily told them of my dereliction of ministerial care. And I felt if only she had talked to me directly rather than others, that would have been a wonderful development. Well, what these situations have in common, the first one I got out of a textbook. The second one happened to me. But what they have in common is called harmful triangulation. This was brought to prominence by family therapist Murray Bowen, who claimed that when the level of anxiety grows in a relationship between two people, that then one of them at least wants to bring another person into this issue. That's the triangulation. Now, so an alliance is formed with a third party. Sometimes this is within a family. One parent will seek an alliance with a child in the family, etc. But it happens all the time. And it's such a common occurrence because it's something we desire to do to reduce our anxiety or our anger by having someone else share it and take our side. And so we feel some relief. Now, The problem is the person triangulated often begins to feel anxiety, as did the husband. Uh, there's a feeling of unease. Uh, the statement, there are two sides to every story, and I'm just getting one side and asked to take this person's part. And sometimes what is said about the other person is so rancorous that we say to ourselves, boy, if someone can say such things about someone else, what might that person be saying about me? And then this anxiety and anger can spread. I've seen it happen in a congregation where, 30, 50, 100 people can be sucked in. And of course, person to person communications, telephone and email can cause quite a mass triangulation. So, what can you do about it? Well, if you are triangulated, it's important to state in a non-accusatory way that you are uncomfortable with this. Invite the person to take their concerns directly to the person in question, and then ask what they're going to do about it. But direct communication is a daunting thing at times. It may be something from our childhood when we stood up for ourselves and we were punished or ostracized. And oftentimes an aggressive approach leads to greater anger and anxiety. So direct communication, I have benefited so much from the work of Marshall Rosenberg and his nonviolent communication. He says not to use blaming and raising an issue with someone else, not to denigrate their actions or their personality, but to begin with an observation, such as when you raise your voice, I feel fearful and anxious because I need to feel safe and valued. So you make the observation, you say what the feeling is and why the feeling is there. And then you ask, would it be possible in the future that you not raise your voice when communicating with me? Then the other person may express their needs and want some agreement from you as to your ongoing relationship. Now that sounds, it has worked for me on a number of occasions, and I've encouraged other people to use it. But to stay resolutely because what happens, a person has the relief and anxiety by triangulating for a while, but then they need another fix, and so they triangulate again with that person or with someone else. Now, having said that, this can be good use of a triangle. Not exactly the same as the triangulation I've been talking about, but if it's communication with someone else, which will lead to some solution or amelioration of the problem, without the person taking on a feeling of, being earnestly responsible for someone else. I think of an example where a woman in one of my congregations came to me and just went on a diatribe against her doctor. She said that he had diagnosed her with multiple sclerosis, but he would never give enough time in talking to her about the disease and about the prognosis. And she was just so anguished about this and angry about this. And so I said to her, well, I will go with you to your next appointment with this doctor. But before we go, let's make a list of questions. So we have down in black and white what you need to know or want to know. And I'll bring along a tape recorder to record the conversation, and I'll also take notes. And but you can always feel free at that time to ask additional questions. And I was amazed how well this worked. It was amazing. She got answers to her questions, and she had a totally different take on her situation. I remember another case where a woman called me up and she said, I just got a letter from my lawyer and I'm so anxious. I can't open it. If I bring it into your office, will you open the letter and read it to me? Well, I had never had that happen to me before. So I read it to her, and it was a bill. I think it was like for $40,000. It was an amazing amount of money. She was involved in a divorce, and she was so angry with the lawyer who kept doing deposition after deposition. And I was interested to learn of all the phone calls. It might have been just a minute, but he charged 15 minutes of his professional time for every phone call. So it added up to a lot of money. And so I said, well, I'll go with you to your lawyer and we'll get an agreement in writing as to what you want in terms of this process of divorce. And so you're on the same page explicitly. And you know, that worked very well, as very, very good as well. I also have suggested that people go to mediation, not necessarily arbitration where a judgment is made, but where a non-interested third party can listen to both sides of the issue and suggest a way of dealing with this. And we did this in one of my congregations because there was nothing really set up to enable people to deal with the gripes that they had with another person. And so we began to spread through the whole congregation. And so we said, we're going to have well-trained committee on ministry members who will mediate, not arbitrate, assign blame to the parties. And you know, many of those debacles were dealt with positively. But even there's a place, I think, for arbitration. I worked for 3 years as a volunteer with the Better Business Bureau in Washington, D.C. as an arbitrator. And we were able to come up with a judgment in situations like that. Now, I'm not counseling a totally Pollyanna view about this. Sometimes it might be dangerous to go to a person directly if that person is violent. Maybe your job might be at stake, et cetera, et cetera. But these are some suggestions I make regarding the issue of triangulation. To be as direct as you can, and not to rely on, dealing with your anxiety by roping in another person to be your ally. Now, I've presented this to you. I'm interested in how you respond to it. Have you faced experiences like this? Has it been helpful to detriangulate? But I'm interested in hearing how you respond.